The Tale of Dawn and Midnight. In a serene valley surrounded by rolling hills and endless meadows, there were two magnificent horses. Their names were Dawn and Midnight, and they belonged to two neighboring farms that had been entwined in history for generations. Dawn was a beautiful golden mare, her coat gleaming like the first light of the morning sun. Midnight, on the other hand, was a sleek black stallion, his coat as dark as the night sky. Though they had lived beside each other for many years, they had never truly met. The two farms where they lived were peaceful and prosperous, and the horses were well cared for by their owners. Dawn's owner, a kind woman named Emily, loved to ride her through the fields and forests, admiring the way her hooves seemed to dance upon the earth. Midnight's owner, a quiet man named Samuel, had always kept to himself but had a soft spot for the majestic stallion. Midnight's strength and elegance were unmatched, and his eyes held an intelligence that captivated anyone who looked closely. Dawn and Midnight would often catch glimpses of each other across the fields. Dawn would graze near the edge of the meadow, her tail swishing gracefully, while Midnight would wander the far side, his dark form striking against the green backdrop. Each time their eyes met, something unspoken flickered between them, an invisible connection that neither fully understood. They were just horses, after all, yet there was a pull, a bond that could not be ignored. One warm spring day, when the sun shone brightly and the wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, Emily decided to take Dawn for a long ride through the valley. The day felt perfect, light, airy, and full of promise. As they trotted down the path, Emily smiled at the peacefulness of the day, unaware that Midnight had broken free from his pasture and was wandering nearby. Dawn, sensing the presence of another, perked up her ears and looked across the field. There, just beyond the tall grasses, stood Midnight. His glossy black coat shimmered under the sunlight, his proud stance emanating confidence. Dawn's heart skipped a beat as their gazes locked, and for the first time, she felt an overwhelming urge to meet him. Without thinking, she quickened her pace, pulling away from Emily as if the wind itself carried her toward Midnight. Emily, startled by Dawn's sudden enthusiasm, pulled gently on the reins, but Dawn was determined. The two horses met in the middle of the field, standing still for a moment, as though sizing each other up. Midnight, with his head held high, stepped forward slowly. Dawn took a step back, but then, as if drawn by some invisible force, she closed the distance between them. The air around them seemed to hum with energy. They stood there for several heartbeats, their eyes locked. It was as though the whole world had faded away, leaving only the two of them in that perfect, quiet moment. "Are you lost, Midnight?" Dawn whispered softly, though she knew he couldn't understand her words. Still, she spoke as if he could. Midnight nickered, a soft sound that carried a sense of warmth and reassurance. He leaned his head closer, his black mane brushing against Dawn's golden coat. There was no fear, no hesitation, just the purest form of trust. Emily, watching from a distance, was moved by the sight. She could feel the connection between the two horses, something deeper than mere attraction. It was as if their souls recognized one another. The bond between them was unmistakable, and Emily smiled softly, letting go of the reins and allowing the horses to be free for the moment. For the next few weeks, Dawn and Midnight would meet each day in the meadow. Dawn's golden coat and Midnight's black one formed a striking contrast. Yet together they seemed to shine even brighter. The two horses would race through the fields, their manes flying in the wind, and at times they would stand side by side, grazing peacefully together, content in each other's presence. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a soft golden glow across the valley, Midnight approached Dawn with a different energy. He nuzzled her gently, and she turned her head. Sensing something more than the usual friendship between them, there was an unspoken, understanding, a deep knowing that had grown over the weeks they had spent together. As the first star appeared in the sky, Midnight stepped back and gazed into Dawn's eyes. as though asking for something more. Dawn's heart fluttered in her chest as she took a tentative step forward, closing the gap between them. The distance that had once seemed vast was now a thing of the past. They were no longer two separate creatures. They had become one, their bond stronger than ever before. Under the canopy of stars, Dawn and Midnight stood side by side. The valley was quiet, the only sound the soft rustling of the grass in the evening breeze. And in that moment, as the night enveloped them, they both knew that they had found something, rare and precious, something that couldn't be broken. From then on, the two horses were inseparable. They ran together, free as the wind, through the fields, their bond only growing stronger with each passing day. Their owners, too, felt the change and knew that something special had blossomed between them. Emily and Samuel, both fond of the horses, would often watch from the sidelines as Dawn and Midnight shared moments of joy and peace. Years passed and the seasons changed, but the love between Dawn and Midnight never wavered. They were more than just horses, they were soulmates, bound by something far greater than themselves. In each other, they found comfort, strength, and a love that transcended time. And so, in the quiet valley where the sun rose each morning and set each evening, Dawn and Midnight continued to run free, side by side, forever united in love.